World War I was a global conflict fought between two coalitions, the Allies and the Central Powers. One of the deadliest wars in history, it resulted in an estimated 9 million soldiers dead along with another 5 million civilian deaths. In the summer of 1914, the nations of Europe were tied together by treaties, alliances, as well as secret agreements. The Triple Alliance encompassed the German Empire, Austria, and Italy. On the 28th of June 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, heir to Emperor Franz Joseph I of Austria, visited Sarajevo, capital of the recently annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina. Assassins took up positions along the route taken by the Archduke's motorcade. Supplied with arms by extremists within the Serbian Black Hand intelligence organization, they hoped Ferdinand's death would free Bosnia from Austrian rule. Nedeljko Kabrinović threw a grenade at the Archduke's car and injured 2 of his aides, who were taken to hospital while the convoy carried on. The other assassins were also unsuccessful, but an hour later, as Ferdinand was returning from visiting the injured officers, his car took a wrong turn into a street where Gavrilo Princip was standing. He fired 2 pistol shots, fatally wounding Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. Although Emperor Franz Joseph was shocked by the incident, political and personal differences meant the 2 men were not close. Allegedly, his first reported comment was, "A higher power has re-established the order which I, alas, could not preserve." The impact of the murder of the heir to the throne was significant and has been described by historian Christopher Clark as a 9/11 effect, a terrorist event charged with historic meaning, transforming the political chemistry in Vienna. On the 23rd of July, Austria delivered an ultimatum to Serbia, listing 10 demands made intentionally unacceptable to provide an excuse for starting hostilities. On the 28th July, they declared war on Serbia and began shelling Belgrade. In response, Russia ordered general mobilization in support of Serbia. By the 4th of August, Germany, France, and Britain were drawn into the war, with the Ottoman Empire joining in November of that same year. Germany's strategy in 1914 was to first defeat France, then transfer forces to the Russian front. However, this failed, and by the end of 1914, the Western Front consisted of a continuous line of trenches stretching from the English Channel to Switzerland. The Eastern Front was more dynamic, but neither side could gain a decisive advantage, despite costly offensives. As the war expanded to more fronts, Bulgaria, Italy, Romania, Greece, and others joined in 1915. Pre-war military tactics that emphasized open warfare and the individual rifleman proved obsolete. Technological advances allowed the creation of strong defensive systems largely impervious to massed infantry advances, such as barbed wire, machine guns, and far more powerful artillery, which dominated the battlefield and made crossing open ground extremely difficult. Both sides struggled to develop tactics for breaching entrenched positions without suffering heavy casualties. As the war progressed, new offensive weapons were developed, such as the use of gas and the tank. The development of tanks in World War I was a response to the stalemate that developed on the Western Front. Although vehicles that incorporated the basic principles of the tank, armor, firepower, and all-terrain mobility had been conceived before the war, it was the heavy infantry casualties that hastened the tank's development. Research took place in both Great Britain and France, with Germany only belatedly following the Allies' lead. In Great Britain, an initial vehicle, nicknamed Little Willie, was constructed at William Foster & Co. during August and September 1915. The prototype of a new design that became the Mark I tank was demonstrated to the British Army on the 2nd of February 1916. Although initially termed landships by the Landship Committee, production vehicles were named tanks to preserve secrecy. The term was chosen when it became known that the factory workers at William Foster referred to the first prototype as the tank because of its resemblance to a steel water tank. The Battle of the Somme took place between the 1st of July and the 18th of November 1916 on both sides of the River Somme in France. The battle was intended to hasten a victory for the Allies. More than 3 million men fought in the battle, of whom more than 1 million were either wounded or killed. making it one of the deadliest battles in all of human history. In early 1917, the United States entered the war on the side of the Allies, and later the same year, the Bolsheviks seized power in the Russian October Revolution, making peace with the Central Powers in early 1918. Germany launched an offensive in the West in March 1918, and despite initial success, it left the German army exhausted and demoralized. A successful Allied counter-offensive later that year caused a collapse of the German front line. By the end of 1918, Bulgaria, the Ottoman Empire, and Austria-Hungary agreed to armistices with the Allies, leaving Germany isolated. Facing revolution at home and with his army on the verge of mutiny, Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated on the 9th of November. Fighting ended with the armistice of the 11th of November 1918, while the subsequent Paris Peace Conference imposed various settlements on the defeated powers, notably the Treaty of Versailles. The dissolution of the Russian, German, Austro-Hungarian, and Ottoman empires resulted in the creation of new independent states, including Poland, Finland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. After the war, there grew a certain amount of academic focus on the causes of war and on the elements that could make peace flourish. The Paris Peace Conference imposed a series of peace treaties on the Central Powers, officially ending the war. The 1919 Treaty of Versailles dealt with Germany and, building on Wilson's 14 points, established the League of Nations on the 28th of June 1919. The Central Powers had to acknowledge responsibility for all the loss and damage to which the Allied and associated governments and their nationals have been subjected as a consequence of the war imposed upon them by their aggression. In the Treaty of Versailles, this statement was Article 231. This article became known as the War Guilt Clause, as the majority of Germans felt humiliated and resentful. Overall, the Germans felt they had been unjustly dealt with by what they called the Diktat of Versailles. German historian Hagen Schulz said the treaty placed Germany under legal sanctions, deprived of military power, economically ruined, and politically humiliated. Of the 60 million European military personnel who were mobilized from 1914 to 1918, 8 million were killed, 7 million were permanently disabled, and 15 million were seriously injured. Germany lost 15% of its active male population, Austria-Hungary 17%, and France 10%.